widely depending on the type of institution that your child is looking to attend. Your community colleges and state colleges may have lower tuition and higher fees, whereas a lot of the partner colleges and the private schools that are here today and many of our other cohorts around the country often have much higher tuition and lower fees. Room and board really depends on the type of institution you're looking at. It could be anywhere from $5,000 or $6,000 a year to $15,000 or $16,000 a year, just depending on the type of school and depending on the type of plan. Some institutions have multiple board options, and some schools like mine only have one. There's one meal plan option, there's nothing to choose from. Books and supplies are often included in financial aid budgets because we know that your child has to buy books to go to college. So we know that that's an expense that your family is going to incur during the course of the year, and that's put in the financial aid budget. And travel, depending on where you're from, most schools will put in an allowance for travel. Some schools also require that your child be covered by health insurance. Actually, most of the schools in this country require that now, and in many states it is state law that they must be covered by health insurance. Some institutions, I can say that at the institution where I work, for the Questbridge scholars who are admitted, the Questbridge match applicants, and even those who aren't matched, we cover the cost of health insurance because it's expensive, and by virtue of the fact that you're a part of the Questbridge network, you probably can't afford a lot of these things out of pocket. And then we also put in allowances for personal expenses. And those are the sorts of things that we jokingly say to families, we jokingly say to the students. The bathroom fairy kind of stops visiting when you move out of your parents' house. The toothpaste doesn't just miraculously appear anymore. You have to go to CVS and buy your own shampoo. If you want to go out with your friends for dinner, order pizza on campus, those are the personal expenses. Those are the incidentals that students can expect just because they're not living at home anymore and there's not somebody handing them the money to do these things. And as you can see here, this can range a lot. I mean, it can range from $15,000 at some school to $60,000 or $65,000 at other schools. But why we're here today is to talk about the fact that the $65,000, I saw many of you shake your head when I say $65,000. And the reason we're here today is to explain that just because the sticker price, just because it says $65,000 on the website, it does not mean that that's what your family is going to be expected to pay. So we'll talk a little bit about where the money comes from. We'll talk about financial aid, the different types of financial aid, and then after that we'll go into the family contribution and when and how your family is expected to come up with some funds. So the best kind of financial aid that there is are grants or scholarships. And this is the best because it's free money. It's money that does not have to be repaid by your child or your student or by you. There are multiple sources. The federal and state government nationally are providing the largest sums of financial aid. Billions of dollars in financial aid are provided by the federal government. But in a lot of the partner schools that you'll be hearing from today, the federal and state financial aid is just such a small drop in the bucket because many of the partner schools here today have significant funds of their own that they're providing, but the college and university funds are by far and away the most financial aid that your students will be receiving. And then third-party organizations, maybe your employer, maybe the local church, the local Walmart, the local Elks Club. There are so many third-party organizations that offer private scholarships. So we encourage students to take a look at those. The third-party scholarships offered by private organizations are a way to kind of help cut back on some of the students' expectations for college. And we'll talk a little bit about what those student expectations are. Loans are the ones, it's money that has to be repaid. The federal government offers the Federal Subsidized Direct Loan Program. It's a low-interest loan program. It has pretty good borrowing conditions. It allows students to begin repayment after they graduate. They have 10 years to repay. You've probably all been watching the news and have heard about some recent student loan debt changes that have been made to make repayment a little easier and more flexible on students who do get into debt. Loans can be scary. And I know that there are a lot of families who are afraid of their students getting into debt. They don't want their students to borrow because there's been so much in the media about exorbitant loan debt and an inability to repay those funds. But one of the things that I like to point out is loans aren't bad. They're not a bad thing. Some institutions will offer loans to some of your students, and it really is a way for your students to become a little more responsible in terms of being aware of their borrowing, being aware of their repayment, and it's also a way to start to build a student's credit. It's money that they will have to pay back after they graduate, and it can actually help their credit to have a little bit of debt, because student loan debt is considered good debt as long as they stay on top of it. Some colleges also offer their own loan programs. At Wellesley, we do have our own loan programs in addition to the subsidized and unsubsidized federal direct loans, as well as Perkins loans. Some schools, and I'll put this out there, some schools, when your child receives their financial aid award, you may see a plus loan as part of the financial aid. A plus loan is a parent loan for undergraduate students. Just because they put it on a piece of paper does not mean you're going to qualify for it. So be very careful when you're looking at financial aid awards and you're comparing all the different awards from all of the different amazing schools that your children are going to get into. There are some schools that will put these parent loans on there as a resource to help you pay for the education. But it doesn't mean you're going to qualify for that loan. And what happens if you don't qualify? Where are you supposed to come up with the money? And those are questions that you would need to ask the financial aid offices at that school. Work study is a great opportunity for students to work on campus or in community-based jobs that have something to do with maybe what they're doing on campus. It's great. I was a work study student for 4 years in the financial aid office when I was a student, and it was wonderful because around finals, I could call and say, I really need to cram for this exam that I have tomorrow, and my boss was okay with it. Whereas if I were working off campus at the local coffee shop or at one of the retail stores in town, they may be a little less flexible because they still have to conduct business even though I need to study for my exam. Summer jobs, many institutions will expect what's called a student contribution or a student expectation, and that often will come from summer work. If you expect your child to work the summer between their senior year of high school and their first year of college, the money that they earn during the summer would be money that they could use to help pay their tuition bill in the fall semester, or they could use it to help buy their books when they get to campus. Additionally, the expected family contribution is the other place where the money comes from. EFC, you'll hear people like me who work in financial aid kind of fall into the financial aid window. And we'll start talking about the COA and the EFC and maybe qualify for an SEOG or an ACG, or you don't get it, and it's fine. When we start to slip into the lingo, just say, can you tell me what that means? So an EFC is an expected family contribution. And that is made up of a student contribution and a parent contribution. It's based on both the income and the assets of each of those individuals. So the income and assets of the parent make up the parent contribution, and the income and assets of the student make up the student contribution. When we're calculating an expected family contribution, the sorts of things that we're looking at, especially for the parents, we're looking at the parent's income. We're looking at total income. And what I mean by that is we're not just looking at your adjusted gross income. We may be looking at child support received or child support paid. We'll be looking at, untaxed Social Security benefits, things like that are income that may not be on your tax return, but that are considered as income in the financial aid formula. We're also looking at assets, cash, savings, checking, investments, 529 plans, which are college savings plans. We're looking at money markets, any sort of investment that families may have. We're also looking at many institutions will be looking at your home. If you have home equity, institutions will look at that home equity to determine your family's ability and financial strength. We're also looking at how many people are in your household. Because let's face it, A $65,000 income goes a lot farther for a family of 3 than it does for a family of 7. So we're looking at how many people are in your household that you're supporting and spending this money on. And we're also looking at whether or not there are other children in college. Because if you can afford to pay $50,000, it doesn't matter if that $50,000 is for one child or if that $50,000 is for 2 children. So we have to take into consideration how many people are in college to determine the expected parent contribution. Yes?
Does that include graduate school?
The question was, does that include graduate school? And for the FAFSA, which we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes, graduate school programs are considered for siblings, but for the partner schools that are here today, all of the partner schools present offer institutional financial aid, and in most of these institutions do not consider graduate school as another child in college. Yes?
What makes a student independent?
So the question is, what makes a student independent? There are a number of factors that could make a student independent. The most common are students over the age of 24, students who have a child of their own, students who are orphans or ward of the court, and students who are at risk of being homeless as determined by the homelessness liaison for the local school district. Those are the most common factors. There are some others, and if you actually Google independent for financial aid, a list will come up of what can make a student independent. But those are the most common ones that we see. Did you have a specific one you were wondering about?
Well, I'm just looking like, there's some folks that you can't give your kid any money except a place to stay. So they have to buy their own clothes and basically everything else. Whether they're considered independent. If it still lives with you when you weren't in school.
If the child lives with you, is under the age of 24, then even if they're, working at the local mall in high school and using the money that they make to buy their own clothes and buy their own food and pay their own car insurance, they're still considered dependent because they live in your household and they're not 24. Yes?
What about a student that graduated? Because we're talking about if there is 2 or there's one of the siblings that is in college. What about if that sibling got out of college, but the parents still paying, parents not? Is that still considered as if the student is still in expenses for that college that he just finished, or still paying any loans?
So the question is about if you have maybe an older sibling who was in college and then graduates and you have borrowed loans on that person's behalf. The repayment of those loans is not, you can't consider that person in college. Once they've received a bachelor's degree, they're no longer considered in college. Even if you're still making payments on the loan, the expense that you're paying does not go into the financial aid formula because you're no longer paying for that person's direct educational expenses.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say for her question, if your child, you don't need to be independent, and you really don't have, like, below a certain amount, your expected family contribution is going to be 0. When I was in college, my parents weren't expected to pay anything. And so it really, unless you have a bunch of assets somewhere, they're not going to expect you.
And you'll learn a little bit about the Questbridge match process later today, but for the partner colleges that are here, we have a commitment with the Questbridge organization that the students who we admit through the match process have a set financial aid award for all 4 years at the time of admission, so that there's no question about, right up front what the expected student contribution is, if the institution requires a parent contribution, what that would be, and then it's set for all 4 years, so that you have that you have that insured for all 4 years. Yes.
Would it not change if the parent's income changes over the years?
With the Questbridge match students at these institutions, we actually at Wellesley we don't even require that the Questbridge reapply for financial aid because we set the parent contribution at 0 at the time of admission, and there's no point in reapplying because we're not going to change it from 0 for all 4 years. So each of the partner schools has agreements like that with Questbridge. So many of them won't even require that they reapply. Yes.
And how does that classify with those students who reapply for status every year?
So that, the question is, will they need to reapply to the FAFSA every year, and that depends on the institution. And I think there's a couple of questions. Oh, sure.
If the student was given a car, but until they're 18, it's co-owned by the parent, does the value of the car go on the assets as well?
The value of a car is not reported.
Okay.
No. Some institutions may ask what kind of car the student drives. It helps some institutions get an idea of financial priorities when we have people fill out the forms. Many institutions will ask what kind of cars the family owns. Yes.
Are there also some, because I've run into this, tax implications when your child's dependent for grants, that some grants are, the tuition and fees were non-taxable, but the room and board was taxable?
So that's definitely, the question is about taxable scholarships, and they do exist. And it's definitely something to be aware of when you're ready to file taxes. As a parent of a dependent student, it is not considered taxable income for you because you didn't receive the grants. It becomes the student. The way that the federal tax code works is any grants received in excess of tuition and fees may be considered taxable scholarships, but it's a question you have to ask your tax preparer, and they'll walk you through the process. Yes.
Under the investments, 401k, 403b, retirement type investments, is that counted into the figures that you have to report that as well?
So the question is about retirement assets, and the answer is no. Retirement assets are not to be reported as investments as long as they are held in a traditional retirement vessel. So as long as it is a 401k, a 403b, as long as it is a traditional, a Roth, anything like that, they are not considered investments. If you have made the choice to put all of your money into the stock market and that's your retirement, that counts as investments. Yes.
What about annuities?
Annuities?
No, I don't think so.
The value of the annuities do not need to be reported. If you take a distribution from the annuity, it's considered income.
But that's like used from that.
It would be on your tax return. So it's on the first page of the tax return if you take a payment from an annuity. Okay? So the goal of the Westbridge organization, and hopefully of all of you, is to reduce unmet financial need. So essentially, the cost of attendance we talked about, that was the big sticker price. That's the $15,000 to $65,000 figure. You subtract from that the expected family contribution that is calculated by the institution, and you subtract the financial aid, and what's left is called unmet need. Now, this would be a question that you can ask at the college fair today. As you're walking around and you're meeting reps from different institutions, look for colleges who meet 100% of the demonstrated need of a family. Not every school can afford to do this, and this is not only true for today. My suggestion to ask college counselors is not only true for the 35 schools that are here today. It is as you're going through this process, ask that question. Have your daughter or son ask that question of every single school that they're looking at. Because if the school can't meet 100% of the students' demonstrated need, and we'll go through an exercise here in a couple minutes, you'll see what that means for your family. So we've got a little example here. Of the 3 colleges listed here, raise your hand if you think college A is the most affordable option. All right, has a little huge foreshadowers here. College B at $31,000, is that the most affordable? And most of you probably see that $18,000 figure and think it's a lot of money.
Just the grants, so what do you pay? I've seen it.
Is it possible to cut the lights that are on the screen?
Because you may have to pay all
Cut the
18,000.
lights for us?
There's lights shining on the screen.
Yeah. Oh, it's the... Sure, there are a bunch of...
So it's... Oh. You always need another big out too with elements.
Individual round.
Well, that wasn't the light switch.
The element of surprise.
The other one's pointing at.
So, if you look at the gift aid, EFC, and work study, $62,000 may turn into $5,000.
Huh?
It might turn into $5,000 because of all the stuff you can get.
$31,000 and $18,000. Which one looks most affordable? Alright, for now. Let's say that you apply for financial aid and the accepted family contribution is $2,000. That still probably makes School C look the most affordable. When you bring into consideration the financial aid award from each of the institutions, so College A has offered $57,000 in grant, $3,000 in work study, and no loan. That's probably a Questbridge package. School B offers $19,000 in grant or gift aid, $2,000 in work study, and a $6,400 loan. Pretty significant loan, especially if you're looking for $6,400 a year for every year. And then the third school is offering $2,000 in grant. They're offering no work study. Maybe they don't have any jobs on their campus. And $5,500 in loans. So now you're seeing that College A probably still looks the most affordable, or now looks the most affordable, I should say. Because out of $62,000 cost of attendance, there's a minimal family contribution, a significant grant, a little bit of work study, no loan, and no unmet need. So your family is looking to pay a total of that expected family contribution of $2,000. School B has unmet need of $2,000. Now the trick is, your family contribution is $2,000. You gotta pay that. But now there's this unmet need of $2,000. The college isn't giving that money to your family. So it really becomes the responsibility of your family to come up with that money. So instead of the $2,000 contribution that was calculated, you're probably looking at paying $4,000 plus your student graduating with about $28,000 in loans. And School C, there's a pretty significant amount of unmet need. This may be a local community college or a local state school that just doesn't have the financial aid budget to be able to give your family the resources that you need. And what that means is your family has to pay the $2,000 contribution, but you still have to come up with this $8,500. Somehow, some way, your family has to figure that out. So that's why we say, look for schools that have no unmet need, schools that meet 100% of the need, because anytime that there's unmet need, it really becomes the responsibility of your family to figure out how to get that paid.
How about question?
Yes.
If it says like loan 0, unmet need 0, how it's come up to you pay 2,000?
Because the expected family contribution, the EFC, is that's the $2,000 that your family has. Okay. Yes.
Sorry for that, for the student contribution in EFC, how, I've noticed it in my very from college, but about how much is the student supposed to contribute?
So the question is about the student contribution and how much a student is generally expected to contribute, and it varies from school to school. The formula requires that if the student earns over a certain amount of money, there's a contribution from their income. And then the formula also says that of the assets that they have in the bank, they would be expected to pay somewhere between 20 and 25% of their student assets each year. And that's basically because any money that a student has saved up at this point, the expectation is that they've saved it for college. So now is the time that we're looking for a contribution from those assets.
So 20 to 25% of their net money?
Of their assets. Yeah. So, and some institutions have a standard student contribution. At my institution, every single student across the board is expected to contribute about $2,000 a year across the board. Yes.
Some schools, I mean, some cluster schools have no loan policy, and some of them have a loan policy. Okay, but if you're not, you get a loan, and then you get a loan if you're a math student. You get a loan with the colleges that have loans as part of the financial aid package.
I believe the answer is no.
The answer is no.
I'm almost 100% certain the answer is no. For students who are matched through the match program, it is an agreement that the institutions have with Questbridge that we will admit the student and will not require student loans.